Hello. The night in San Francisco lay like velvet on the city, and Roman Hassel, a city boy who America loved for its transparent fintech, stood by the window of his penthouse and for the first time in years did not recognize his own reflections. One looked like the founder, the other like the defendant. The phone rang 3 times, as if warning that the truth would come without a knock. The SEC has opened an investigation. Your Q4 reporting contains signs of fraud. A letter with a signature as dry as stone, as cold as ice. Is this a joke? He said into the void. No joke. The panorama of the city answered with its back. You asked for the truth without filters. Roman had always believed in numbers that leave a mark, like stars in a long exposure. His company, Helios Pay, was building a clean economy. No hidden fees, no gray areas, with an interface that even a grandmother in Oklahoma could master in 5 minutes. But today the lights went out. The lawyers wrote, "Hold on to the rock, the storm is big." The PR team asked for silence. And in the personal tab, there was a message from Alice, his former lover and co-founder. "I'm sorry that everything is like this. I'll send you something. Take a look carefully." He opened the attached document, a table of transactions, invisible in regular reports, like an undercurrent. The amount that was returning to a charitable foundation that formerly belonged to the mother of one of the board members. Roman felt acid rising from inside. Is this the work of my team or someone's trap? He thought, and his heart, like an old engine, skipped a beat. If it's true, I've lost, he said out loud. If it's a lie, I have to prove it to a world that likes to judge faster than red. And then another letter. Tomorrow morning, the council votes to remove you. Roman closed his eyes and saw a boy from Ivano-Frankivsk who had once spent the night in a dormitory and washed cups for programmers, dreaming of becoming someone who wasn't ashamed of his name. He took a deep breath like a diver facing dark water. "Okay," he whispered. "Then let's go?" And the first act ended in silence. The hum of a city that knows neither regret nor pause, and a man standing on the edge of his own legend, about to take a step into the darkness, where numbers stop being numbers and turn into sentences. Morning rolled into the boardroom like a cold wave. The glass table, the faces that had smiled on magazine covers yesterday, today resembled marble masks. Roman spoke evenly, neatly arranging the facts, control samples, internal audits, letters reminding him of ethical standards. But the words fell into the void. "Roman," said the chairman of the board, "we admire your idealism. But the market does not tolerate uncertainty. You are the face of the brand. The brand needs operational peace. A temporary suspension is in everyone's best interest." Temporary sounded like forever. He saw one of the directors avoid his gaze. He saw the nervous gesture of his former friend, Neil, who had once sworn never to play other people's cards. He saw the smile of a PR advisor that could be sold as a cold compress for other people's burns. Then the media space exploded. Columns with headlines that seemed to have been ripped from cyberpunk newspapers. The gospel of transparency turns out to be a block of shares. Holy Pay robbed its own apostles. Helios sky has become dark. Old partners tore up letters of intent. Banks cut off credit lines. People stood outside the office with signs reading, "Restore our trust." Among them was the intern whose first contract he had personally signed, crying not because she had lost her job, but because she had lost her bearings. The house was as quiet as a museum after closing. Alice sent another file, an excerpt from the internal messenger, a conversation between Neil and a foundation advisor whose name had previously flashed on his calendar as a donor meeting. "We need to push the process. Let his principles be the rope. Let's make it look like we care." "So, a conspiracy," said Roman. "Not an accident, not an oversight. Architecture." He called Neil. "Tell him it wasn't you." "I'm not saying anything without a lawyer," he answered, and the air snorted in the receiver, as if someone were closing a safe. At night, Roman went out to the empty embankment. The city was lit by other people's windows. He understood. Trust was lost, reputation was nullified, and hope. Hope is like that thin ice that holds you until you believe it exists. He stopped, looked up at the dark sky, and for the first time in his life he allowed himself weakness to say out loud, "I'm scared." The words dissolved in the fog, but did not return. And then he felt rage, not against the world, but against his own naivety. That same evening, A lawsuit was filed from the state attorney general's office, suspected intentional falsification. The world had shifted completely. The galaxy is not what it seems, Roman thought. But if it has gravity, I will find its center. The ally came not from a shiny cover, but from the basement of the archive. His name was Noah, a former night technician who had kept the server room alive for 12 years when the world was asleep. He found Roman by the coffee machine in the co-working space where he had moved like an exile. "Mr. Hassel." "Roman, I saw the logs. The ones that shouldn't exist." "Why you? Why now?" "Because I'm tired of watching people who were building something honest burn in the fire of someone else's scripts." They sat at night over old backups, where every byte was a witness. Noah showed a shadow cron, a schedule of tasks that were run off the clock, a cleanup script that changed the origin labels of funds and transactions only at the moment of quarterly exports. The service key signature was real, but issued from an account that belonged to Neil. But two people had access to the key. Noah touched the next folder, and the second one was the Foundation's advisor, through delegated access, disguised as a check on charitable tranches. "Forbidden knowledge," Roman whispered. "Something I'll be burned for if I use, and something I won't forgive myself for if I keep quiet." Then an unexpected touch from the past. In the email from 5 years ago was a letter to Alice. "Don't give them control of the export endpoints, even if they pressure you. Our light is our code." He had agreed to the compromise for the sake of investment, convincing himself that the world was growing up with him. Now every word was turning around like a mirror. "You said yes when you should have said no." And now that agreement had taken the form of a trap. "We have enough to deploy a counter-narrative," Noah said. "But this isn't just about the court. It's about principle." "Principle?" Roman smiled without joy. "My principle brought me to my knees." "No," Noah answered quietly. "You were brought to your knees by someone else's fake, eaten away by your trust. Principle is what will make you stand up." They went outside before dawn. The city was lightly smoking with cafes. Alice sent a short message. "I'll go with the evidence." Enough silence. Roman held his breath. Forbidden knowledge became hope. If the truth is fire, they will set the night on fire. At the end of that day, he opened the safe, in which lay his father's leather notebook. "Do not betray your last name." And it was an old recipe from childhood. When they kick you out of the house, build a house within yourself. He understood. His home was people who still remembered what they started for. And with this discovery, the world suddenly became sharper, as if carved. The seams of the conspiracy appeared, as on developed film. The courtroom was filled with the smell of paper, coffee, and tension. The prosecutor was building the story like a movie about the fall of an idol. Roman's lawyer didn't hit the high notes. He just laid out the pebbles on the road. Logs, timestamps, service keys, comparative dumps. When Neil was called, he spoke, looking away, but at the word delegated access, his hand trembled, as if the room had gotten colder. "Why did you change the export parameters?" the judge asked. "We were just optimizing the process," he replied. "For charity." "Optimization," the judge repeated, "which accidentally replaced the existence of certain data trails with their absence." "Amazing." Alice testified calmly, and each of her sentences was a nail in the cap of someone else's legend. She told about the pressure of an investor who demanded predictable metrics, about the board chat, where the PR advisor wrote, "Let him talk about honesty. We'll talk about stability." But Noah became decisive. He explained how the Shadow Crown was launched only during the generation of reports, how the logs were synchronized with the time zone to bypass internal triggers, and how it was impossible to do without the informed access of two people. "Why didn't you say this before?" The prosecutor aimed his words at him. "Because I thought that justice was a system. And then I realized, justice is people who decided not to be silent." Outside the court, Roman gave one brief statement. "I am not a saint and not a martyr. I made mistakes. I allowed other people's hands to touch what I was supposed to protect. Today I am paying for it. But those who built the lie, signing my name, must also pay." The demonstration culminated. A dependency graph appeared on the screen like a planet in a telescope. The lines converged into a knot. Neil's account and the Foundation advisor's token tied to it. The room fell silent. The judge put down her pen. "The court pauses," she said. and advises the parties to look each other in the eye and remember what honor is. Roman returned to the bench. Noah put his hand on his shoulder. All or nothing, he thought. But if it's all, it's not just for me. The decision came not like a thunderbolt, but like a clear day after a long rainstorm. The court dropped the main charges against Roman, recognizing him as a victim of manipulation, and referred the case of Neil and the fund's advisor for further investigation. However, the market is not slow to forgive. Stocks did not return to the sky. Investors did not line up with flowers. Trust is not a painting. You cannot buy it at an auction. It is cultivated like a garden. Roman refused to return to the CEO's chair. Instead, he opened the Laboratory of Clarity, a small institute of open financial protocols and a training program for teenagers from families where money is discussed in whispers or with envy. "We will not make everyone rich," he said in his first lecture, "but we will teach them not to confuse success with truth." Noah headed the data security department. Alice volunteered, sat on the floor between the children, and said, "Ask me about mistakes. I know everything about them." In the evening, Roman returned to the same embankment. The city was once again illuminated by countless windows. He called his mother, who lived by the old river in her house. "Mom, I haven't fixed the past yet, but I've learned not to bargain with it." They were silent together, as people who have survived a storm are silent and know. The sea does not ask for forgiveness. He wrote a letter to the general public, not a manifesto, but a quiet and honest page. Is it possible to be rich and honest? It is possible, if wealth is not a goal, but a consequence of the value you bring. What is more important, truth or success? Truth, because without it, success is just a signboard in an empty store. Can the past be bought back? No, but you can build the future in such a way that there is no temptation to sell it again. And when he finished, the stars above the bridge flashed brighter. He smiled. The galaxy is really not what it seems, but it still has gravity, human, domestic, unassuming. It holds you when business fails, when legends crumble, when you are rich, but for the first time in a long time you are honest with yourself again. And this is a light that you cannot turn off with any shadow crown. This is the light that remains with you when all other lights have already gone out.